Kamala Harris is doing some interviews. How about that? Not hostile or confrontational interviews. She was on The View today discussing how her and Biden differ or don't differ. She responded to Donald Trump's comments on Hurricane Helene and now Milton. Let's watch.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. Yeah. The work that we have done, for example, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors is something I care deeply about allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices.
Yes.
And bring the cost of prescription medication down for seniors, but my intention is to expand that for all Americans. Mm-hmm. The work we have done to invest in American industries, whether it be in terms of manufacturing and creating almost 800,000 new jobs around manufacturing, those were all a shared priority. And the idea that somebody would be playing political games for the sake of himself, but this is so consistent about Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He puts himself before the needs of others. I fear that he really lacks empathy on a very basic level to care about the suffering of other people and then understand the role of a leader is not to beat people down, it's to lift people up.
On Monday night, she appeared on CBS News. 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker grilled the vice president on tough topics she's been able to avoid so far, such as the economy and immigration. Here was one testy exchange.
There was an historic flood of undocumented immigrants coming across the border the first 3 years of your administration. As a matter of fact, arrivals quadrupled from the last year of President Trump. Was it a mistake to loosen the immigration policies as much as you did?
It's a long-standing problem. And solutions are at hand. And from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions.
What I was asking was it a mistake to kind of allow that flood to happen in the first place?
I think the policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. Okay?
But the numbers did quadruple.
And the numbers today,
watch.
because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half.
But should you have done
cut
that?
the
Should you
flow
have
of
done that?
fentanyl by half, but we need Congress to be able to act.
Whitaker pressed her on another key issue she's provided little clarity on, the economy. Let's watch.
The other economists that have reviewed my plan versus my opponent and determined that my economic plan would strengthen America's economy, his would weaken it.
But
my plan, Bill, if you don't mind, my plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about.
60 Minutes extended an invite to Donald Trump to sit down for the network's special election coverage. A long-time tradition going back decades. He backed out of it. Okay, I understand this was not the best interview, the 60 Minutes interview for Kamala Harris. I think simultaneously, as she could have been prepared better for some of the rapid-fire questions she was getting, I also think, you know, does he deserve to be fired? No. Does he deserve to have a DEI person come in and advise him? No. But I think Bill Whitaker's questioning was all framed from the lens of Republican talking points, whether he's even conscious of it or not. You can still ask some of these questions, but the way that he asked them, he framed them, were really coming from the lens of how the Republicans have been going after Kamala Harris. Some of the things she has answered, some she hasn't.
I agree with that, but also the framing of all questions that J.D. Vance gets from mainstream media in the interviews he do are the same way. They are from the Democratic framing. So I'm not going to be shedding any tears that, oh no, she actually got some Republican-centered questions that she responded to somewhere in the ballpark of okay, I would say, especially for her. The real issue, I think, actually comes from the View interview, where she has no real answer for what she would do differently than Joe Biden. But look at Joe Biden's approval ratings. Don't you want to distinguish yourself from your predecessor to some degree, given that he is like historically unpopular? And part of that has to do with just Joe Biden's age and what we've seen from him.
Yeah.
But it also has to do with his policies. There are wide gaps in how Americans feel about Democrats' approach to immigration and the economy, and Republicans. Those are good issues for Trump. So she probably should come up with an answer, one that's not insulting to Joe Biden. Not that anyone in the Democratic Party really cares about Joe Biden's feelings, clearly. That what she would do differently on the border and on immigration. I personally don't love the questions that are along the lines of, but how are you going to do this given Congress, whatever? I mean, like, those are valid questions, but what is the candidate supposed to say? The reality is, yes, the Congress is controlled by the opposition party, partly. I need total dominance over the entire system to even enact the basic parts of a legislative agenda akin to what Barack Obama had for however many weeks and months he had it. And short of that, I can do nothing, is the honest answer.
I'm going to say something.
It'd be the honest answer for Republicans, too.
I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me in a little bit of hot water. But number one, I think that the Biden-Harris administration has done a very poor job, and this is what people are saying behind closed doors, championing their successes. And I know you may not agree with the successes, but it is their job and it is their communications team to really focus on how to champion their successes, including, the Inflation Reduction Act should have been called a climate bill for the progressives. I know it should have been,
Well, it didn't reduce inflation, so they might as well call it something else.
But they tried to be a little bit smart in terms of how they, Republicans always say, the Freedom Act or whatever, and it's really something that takes away your freedoms. So number one, I think that they really have a messaging problem. Number two, the honeymoon's over for Kamala Harris, and they should have known that was about to happen. And now what you're seeing, and this is my perspective, is folks who have been around in the same circles advising the last few presidential candidates who really still do not understand in tone, in depth, in their bones what working people are concerned about. And I think that plays out through the candidates in different ways. I think Biden just naturally has a better sense, just one-on-one with voters. I think Kamala does too, but she's not doing great in these kinds of media environments. Obviously, that's probably why they don't put her out there. But it's also their job to do a little work on that. And the vibes are, I'm not saying the vibes are gone, they're just kind of being channeled in different ways. I'm even seeing this online with their social media presence and the types of releases they send out. There was a lot more organic energy a month ago, and they were capitalizing off of that. But now you have this political industrial complex that has jumped into the campaign, and it's becoming a little bureaucratic, and you can feel it. I mean, I can't tell you the crap that I get in my emails from them, oh, look at this great tweet that Kamala Harris said today, and it's so lame. In 1 month, they went from 2008 Obama energy to 2012 Obama energy.
Well, the campaign has entered a steady state where there's nothing, there's no more debates on the horizon. There's no dramatic news taking place. It's kind of settled into a stasis where, depending on how big you think the margin of polling error is going to be, Kamala Harris is either up a little bit or going to lose, and you don't know because it's a genuine unknown. Whether if the polls are dead on, she's probably going to win. If they're off by as much as they were last time, she's probably going to lose. And we have no idea whether there's nothing exogenous that could, there are things that could happen, but there's no reason to think there's going to be some massive overperformance by her or by him at some future debate. Something in the VP candidates is going to become revealed in a debate they're having. Nothing is bound to happen between now and the election that will fundamentally reshape the race. Now, obviously, things have happened in past cycles. Access Hollywood, Hillary emails, hurricanes, although I don't think hurricanes are going to do enough to
not this time around
politically change the landscape. General dissatisfaction with the federal government's performance does not help Biden-Harris. The longshoreman strike was going to be something that could have hurt, although that seems now to have been resolved.
There is one thing we do know will happen, and this is why I'm going to advocate for shorter elections like they do everywhere else in the world, is that there are consultants who are going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And these ads that we're watching, they're not the most creative, they're not the Daisy ad. This isn't like, oh my gosh, you're moving that one voter who would, it's like repetitive ads. They're so cookie cutter. They could have been pulled from the 90s on both sides. And I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of this election. I'm sure you are too. I wish the election could happen today because at this point, all that's happening is these guys are making money.
I'm
annoying
still
people.
treated like a Michigan swing voter for some reason, even though I'm not registered to vote in Michigan. So I just get insane messages from both campaigns.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm sick of hearing from it. I like the different tone between Democratic ads and Republican ads. Yeah. Republican ads are like, don't miss your chance to get the last free golden MAGA hat and join the Trump Love Forever Club. And Democratic ads are like, the world is ending.
Apocalypse.
A meteor is about to hit us. It is too late to avoid the disintegration of New York, but we could still elect Kamala Harris. If you donate just $5 right now, Robby, it's almost too late.
They called me a really valuable donor today, and I'm like, I don't know what I bought the hat. That's what I bought.
You bought a hat.
I bought a hat because it was just too cool, and I finally got in the mail.
Oh. Elon has the dark MAGA hat now, the dark Trump hat.
Dark Elon.
We are entering a new era. More Rising right after this.